It is good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the World IA Cafe Speaker Series, and thank you for joining in. I know for sure this webinar will be excellent. You will immensely enjoy it, and I'm sure you will learn so much from this. My name is Rupa Mishra. I'm an associate professor at Rutgers University. I manage and teach in the user experience design as well as the product design concentrations in the MBS program. I'm also an active member of World IA Association. The topic for today's webinar is conversation design. The speaker for this interactive event is Malak Sadek. She is a doctoral candidate at the Dyson School of Design Engineering at Imperial College London, and also part of the Enrichment cohort at the Alan Turing Institute. She also holds fellowships at the Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Technology and the Centre for Human-Inspired Artificial Intelligence at Cambridge University. Malak also works as a research lead at AIxDesign and is part of the teaching team for the Human-Centered Design Engineering and the Responsible Engineering Design Innovation modules at Imperial College London. While I was reading through this, I was wondering, how do you manage so many things? In this talk, Malak is going to give an overview of conversation design and conversational AI, and how different AI roles can get involved with this rapidly expanding field, as well as the value that each role brings to the table. She will also touch on how AI in conversation design works and some of the ethical considerations to keep in mind, which I think is very, very important. So she has a great background. Let me share her LinkedIn profile link in the chat. Also, I would like you to know that we will be recording, and we are, in fact, recording all the speakers in this World IA Cafe Speaker Series. The videos are available on World IA's website. And do we have the link? I will put the link to World IA's website. It's a great organization to network and meet people from all over the world. If you're interested, then please do join the organization. Of course, it is all volunteers. Every year we hold the World IA Day, and this has been going on since 2012. We have Nihar, who is the coordinator, and she will gladly answer your questions. The format of the Cafe Speaker Series is this: about 45 to 50 minutes is the talk, followed by 10-15 minutes Q&A. So please don't hesitate to ask your questions, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of questions today. Also, I would like to remind you, this is a great opportunity to network and meet people. So if you are interested, please do put your LinkedIn profile link in the chat. I will put mine. Networking is so important. I will also share my department's website link if anyone is interested in the master's program, UX or product design. And enjoy the webinar today. Now over to you, Malak.
Thank you so much. All right, let me just get my slides up.
Yeah.
Okay, can you guys see the slides? Okay, all good. Okay, perfect. So yeah, thank you for the great introduction. As mentioned, I'll be talking about the growing field of conversation design today and how it kind of relates to IA and how different roles in the IA community can kind of break into conversational design and start working in this space as well. So I'll start off by just like going through my background really quickly as to why you should listen to me and who I am. And then I'll give an overview of what is conversation design, what is conversational AI, a little crash course on the like basics of how it's done, and then the interesting part of, how can all the different roles ranging from, information architect to product designer to product manager, how can all these roles fit into conversation design and bring value there? And then at the end, discuss like a few ethical things to think about and issues before concluding. All right, so very quickly, just a bit about me. I'm originally from Cairo in Egypt. I now live in the UK, where I've been studying human-computer interaction. I started off with a degree in computer engineering before switching. So I started off more on the kind of technical side of things. But now I'm very interested in kind of closing the gap between the tech side and, developers, data scientists, all the cool tech they build, and then society and humans and their needs and how to kind of bridge the gap between both. So all my work kind of revolves around that. For my PhD, that's specifically around conversation design, which is why I'm kind of talking about this today. All right, so what is conversation AI, conversation design? So conversation AI is any AI-powered tech that has a conversation with you. So that could be a chatbot, it could be a voice assistant like Siri or Alexa, it could be a fully moving talking robot. All of this falls under conversation AI, so long as it's powered by an AI model. I say this because some conversation interfaces are rule-based. So if you say X, it will always respond with Y. That means it's not AI-based, there's no intelligence happening, but we're focusing on kind of the AI-powered kind today. So with ChatGPT and everything that's been happening, it might feel like a very new and shiny thing, but the first chatbot was developed in 1967 at MIT. So it's really like old technology in that sense, but obviously today it's a massively growing space. I would say before the past 2 years, with all the kind of technological advances that have happened, it was mainly used in customer service and customer experience. You've probably dealt with a company's chatbot at some point of your life. But now, obviously, they're becoming more sophisticated and they're being used in, healthcare, in education, in all sorts of different fields. So why is conversational AI such a big thing today? The strongest point is that it's not a new skill that you have to learn. So it's not like a phone or a computer where you have to kind of pick up all these little shortcuts and the things you have to do. Most people can speak, most people can, type out a message. And so it's very familiar, it's very accessible, very easy to kind of get started with. Um, and nowadays, you can create conversation AI with or without coding. So you don't need to have like a technical background to get started making these kinds of experiences. And like I mentioned earlier, they can kind of be plugged into anything ranging from a phone to your fridge to a fully functioning robot. So they have a lot of potential, and the same AI can kind of deliver many different experiences depending on the tech it's embedded in. So this is just hammering the point again that it's a rapidly growing space. There's a lot of interest, a lot of investment going in here. So it's a very exciting space to be working in. And hopefully, like after this talk, you'll have a better sense of what's happening and how to get involved with the space if that's what you're interested in. Yes, so large language models, or LLMs, are responsible for the explosion that we're seeing today with chatbots and everyone kind of speaking about ChatGPT and other models. And the reason why this has happened is that it's taken conversation AI from what's called a closed AI. So that means it's an AI that does a specific task, and maybe it does it really well, it does it better than humans, but it can only do that one task, towards more open AI, or you might have heard of like general AI, where it's just general intelligence and it can help you with a lot of different tasks right away. Obviously, we're not like completely at a general intelligence that's gonna, take over the world and stuff, but it's a step towards that. And that's why people are very kind of excited about it. Just some like things to look out for, which may or may not interest you. Things that are popping up now are things like personality adaptive conversational agents. So what that means is instead of, you talk to ChatGPT, no matter who you are, ChatGPT is going to respond in pretty much the same way unless you ask it to be nicer to you or something. Now, instead, they're going to start to adapt and have a personality in their tone of voice and how they respond depending on you and how you talk to them. So that's something interesting that's gaining traction right now. The second is trying to make it a more collaborative process to build conversation AI. So instead of, people just creating them in isolation, instead now the trend is to kind of invite in users, invite in other stakeholders, and have it become kind of a more collaborative process to get a better end result. And the last one is embodied conversational AI, which just means that we're starting to see more of them have like bodies. So that could be an avatar on a screen, it could be a robot, but that's cool because it then opens up other modes of communication like body language or facial expressions or things like that. So that's another kind of interesting direction that's popping up now. Okay, so quick crash course in conversation design. I know I'm going like quite quickly, but hopefully I'll answer your questions if anything isn't clear. The design process is very similar to any other design process, where you kind of really start with your classic, who's my target user, who's my audience, what are their needs, what is the journey they go through, all of these kind of the starting point for designing anything in general. The main difference starts happening at the second step. So in a lot of cases, you would normally have a user persona, which is a description of a fictional user that represents your typical user of whatever tech you're building. But in this case, it's very common to also have a persona for the conversational AI. So whether it's a chatbot or whatever, you would model it around the person as well. So how would it respond? What's the tone of voice? Is it friendly? Is it professional? So you would build a persona there as well. And then very early on, you would start thinking about IA. So the first decision obviously has to be, is it going to be AI powered or rule based? We're going to assume that we've gone with AI powered and keep moving from there. But the next step is just massive amounts of prototyping. So you're going to be thinking of things like the tone of voice, what kind of language is it going to use, what do we want the user to feel when it speaks to it, etc. And we just iterate and prototype and iterate and prototype. The way this prototyping happens is it's very common to make conversation flowcharts, like the one you see on the right here. This is basically just a simple flowchart that shows how the conversation is going to go, all the choices, all the questions the users might ask. Obviously, this is quite a simple one. It can get very complicated and have like a lot of branches and stuff. But normally what would happen is people would start with the happy path. So the happy path is the simplest path where everything goes right. The user asks for something simple, you help them, they log off, it's finished. So you would start there and then start designing all the repair paths where things go wrong and then you get a human and then other things happen. But it's nice to start with the simple case where everything kind of goes right. So that would be the prototyping part. And then, as I mentioned, you just iterate. And normally what would happen is you would test out the conversations using humans because it's easier than, coding up something or like even just prototyping something. So normally you'd get a human to be the chatbot and another human to be the human, and you would test out the conversation before moving on to actually like building the thing with code or however it's going to be built. So before large language models, the way you would kind of go and build it, like the more technical part, would be that you would break down whatever the user says into intent and entities. So intent is the user's intention. So why are they saying this sentence, or what do they want to get out of this message? So with the photo, like the first example, if someone says best flights to Florida, their intention is they want to buy flight tickets. And this can be very obvious, or sometimes it can be more obscure. And then entities are all the pieces of data that you want to get out of the message to be able to go away and do the task. So again, in that example, an entity would be the location of Florida because you actually need that information to go find a ticket. That's a very kind of stripped down example of that. But now, thanks to large language models, we don't need to do that anymore. Now what happens is you build something called a knowledge base. So let's say you're a bank and you want to build a chatbot. You cannot just go take GPT, which is the model that ChatGPT is built on, and plug it into your website and then go away, because you have no control over what it's going to say. It doesn't know how your bank works, etc. So what people would do is they take large language models and they fine tune them based on their own personal knowledge base. This knowledge base is just a collection of documents, links to websites, things like Confluence or Notion, or like content management, etc. And then you can think of it as all the documents that you would need to train a new employee at the bank, basically. So this can range from a document that has like their mission and vision, FAQs, what to do if this crashes. So all these different documents that you would use for like onboarding or training, that would go in your knowledge base. And then what the model would do is it would be able to access all these documents, retrieve them, and then use that to respond, basically. And so here, obviously, there becomes a much larger emphasis on information architecture, because you can't just shove in pages of paragraphs of text. This needs to be structured so that things can be found efficiently, things can be found accurately. And so now you're getting all of these new job titles of like AI architect or content manager or knowledge manager. And these are actual job titles I've seen on LinkedIn. And they all revolve around kind of managing these knowledge bases for large language models. This is just a diagram of what I was basically just saying now. So you'd have your knowledge base of all these documents and sources on the left. And then whenever you give a prompt or you write a sentence to the large language model, it would go find the relevant document, find the answer there, and then come back and then give you the answer. Okay, so how can different roles get involved in everything I've just described? The kind of short, sweet answer is that there's a lot of value that information architects can bring, simply because now large language models are operating on knowledge and information more than on fixed rules. So people working in IA already know very well how to kind of structure and organize information. They know how to sort content, have a hierarchy, and all of this is needed for the conversation to flow naturally and flow well. And they're able to kind of visualize how to guide users through a process, how to give the right information at the right time. These are all skills that are already part of your work and that are very kind of marketable to the space. And then in terms of product designers and managers, it can feel like a very kind of new and scary thing. But at the end of the day, these AIs don't just sit in a vacuum. They will be part of an interface. They will be part of a product. And so your usual, user testing and iteration and prototyping, that all happens same as usual. The conversation part largely happens as I kind of gave in the crash course, obviously a bit more detailed, but that's kind of the high-level overview of it. And so a lot of the principles of classic product management would still apply here. Obviously, content designers, this goes without saying, you're already very well versed in copywriting and how to engage people. And then also a very important one is ensuring that the tone of voice and everything matches the branding of whoever owns the conversational AI. So I'm just going through what you already know how to do and kind of emphasizing how valuable that is in conversation design, because there are very few people who will have, had degrees in conversation design or are naturally like able to break into the space. It's all people who have skills that are then transferable. And then the last role I wanted to talk about was prompt engineering. So obviously this did not exist like a couple of years ago. This I would say is more, it could be a technical role or a non-technical role, depending on the company. However, when it's technical, it's usually around how do you write the best prompt to get the information you need and not bump into any hallucinations or inaccuracies or things like that. But also, if it's not too technical, then something very valuable here is linguistics, or any language-related degree is very valuable. And I've seen a lot of prompt engineers and a lot of people working in this space originally have language-related degrees. So yeah, if you are any of these people and you want to get started with conversation design, the two things I would recommend doing is playing around with voiceflow.com. So this is a very simple interface to build those flow charts I showed earlier. You basically put blocks, put arrows between them, you type out in each stage what you want the AI to say, and then with a click of a button, you can prototype it. So it's a very nice way to kind of very quickly prototype something, see how it feels. And this is actually like quite sophisticated and actually used in the industry. So it'll get you a long way if you want to start playing around with it. Otherwise, if you want to get super serious and get kind of a training or certificate, then I would recommend the Conversation Design Institute, which is, to my knowledge, at least the only kind of institute that's offering proper kind of education and training courses on how to do proper conversation design. And I think like on your CV, a certificate from there would go a long way. Okay, last bit. I'm sorry, I know I've gone quickly through this and it's a lot to take in, but it's very, very important to me to kind of highlight some broader issues. So you may or may not know of this example. This is a conversation AI called Replica. It's an app on your phone. I don't know if it's available online or not, but essentially it's a AI that's meant to be your companion or your friend. And it's very famous because people get very attached to it, sometimes as a friend, sometimes romantically. And what happened is in early 2023, the company who owns it released a software update that made the AI forget about its relationship with the different users. And people were heartbroken. Like they reported feeling like, you know, they'd broken up with someone or they lost their best friend or, and it was very powerful to see that a conversational AI could make you feel that way. And it goes back to what I said, that we all know how to have a conversation. It's a very human thing to do. And so it is possible for the lines to kind of start getting blurred and you become kind of over-reliant or form an emotional attachment. So these are all kind of ethical things to think about if you're starting to work in this space. Obviously, because these things, like many other forms of AI, are also trained off of data from the internet and things like that, they tend to harbor a lot of biases and stereotypes, a lot of racism. So do take that with a grain of salt as well. And then finally, tying back to the fact that they're so easy to talk to, a lot of people might be talking to them and not really understanding how they work or who built them. They might be giving away personal details, not knowing that this chatbot is then going away, storing everything and giving it to the company. So it's always important to deal with this as it is important to deal with any AI responsibly and just be aware of these issues as well. That is pretty much it from my side. Would love to take some questions now. I'm sorry if it was a bit too complicated. But the last thing I want to mention is also if you want to check out any additional resources, there are lots of really nice podcasts around this space, especially VUX World is a very good one. And then there's also a very good book. If you're more of an academic person and you want to get started with a textbook, I recommend Conversations with Things as well. But yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Malak.
Thank
This
you.
was absolutely great. Wonderful, wonderful talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much.